Thank you. All right. So before we started, we would like to take a few minutes to concentrate on our breathing using a grounding exercise. So maybe just like adjust yourself into a comfortable position. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to do that. So what I want you all to do is just take a deep breath for 4 seconds and hold that for 4 seconds. Then I want you to exhale for 4 seconds and hold that for 4 seconds. With this, I would like for everyone to close your eyes and slowly inhale through your nose, trying to inhale in an even, controlled manner, feeling the air enter your nose and try to identify when your inhalation begins and when it ends. And exhale all the air from your lungs well. To 4. Okay, so now that I went through that, is everyone ready? Okay. So let's just take a few seconds to follow the exercise, and you guys are welcome to follow like my timing too. All right. So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. That was really good. We can run through this one more time. So if you guys eyes closed as we go through this again. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, and breathe out. All right, that was really great. I found that relaxing. Um, it's always really great to set aside some time and designate a place where you can just sit comfortably without any distractions. And once you find that place, to just close your eyes and draw your attention all the way down to your toes and work your energy and attention all the way up from your toes and just bring awareness to each and every part of your body, your ankles, your calves, your knees, all the way up to your head. Right now, you may be asking, like, why does this method work? What benefits does this type of meditation have? Well, the body scan meditation encourages self-awareness of sensations we might otherwise be ignoring due to stress and other things in our lives that take up the majority of our time. Um, as for the health benefits, this type of meditation reduces stress, it decreases muscle tension, and increases pain tolerance. With this, I will pass it on to Daphne.
So we would like to ask everyone a question. Why isn't mental health talked about? So if you guys can respond to the question by either going in the chat and putting your response, and then I will be reading it out loud, or if you guys can just unmute yourselves and say your response, that would be great. So like, for example, I'm just gonna give a quick example of why, like, in my family, we used to not talk about mental health, and it was because it was seen as a taboo. And in my parents' like times, I guess you can say, they were taught to not talk about it or not even mention it because it wasn't something important to their parents. So my grandparents. So if you guys can respond, that'd be great.
Hola, señorita Cruz, ¿está sola?
Hi, Carmen. We're doing the presentation right now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're doing the presentation.
A ver, ahora no te escuchaba. ¿Me escuchas?
Yeah,
Hey.
Carmen, there's 9 other people in here.
Okay.
Yeah, Alejandra, so that's definitely right. It's a lot of people think that it's something like, if you talk about mental health, it means that you're weak, but that's actually not right. And we will talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. And Edwin said it's seen as something personal that you should keep to yourself and work on yourself. Yeah, that's definitely something that has been mentioned like to me a lot and when I was younger, but now that I have educated myself, that's definitely not the case. So Stephanie, if you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, so what is mental health? According to the World Health Organization, it is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities and can cope with the normal stresses of life and can work productively and with all the tasks they're doing. And like I said, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. A lot of the times there's a misconception of mental health not being as important as physical health, but in reality, those two different like topics or health categories, if you want to call them, are actually important because they affect how we interact with others, how we respond to certain situations, how we manage stress, and all these different things. Another quick thing that we want to point out is that mental health and mental illnesses are a little too different. So mental illness is something that can disrupt your mental state. And so this is clinically diagnosed by a professionals. So some examples would be anxiety, depression, eating disorders. So a lot of times young adults tend to, self-diagnose, but this requires for you to actually talk with a professional and talk what's going on in your life. And going back to the topic that we asked in the last slide, which is we know that there's a common stigma in our Latino community, but what is the stigma in reality? So the definition of it is when someone or something is viewed in a negative way because of distinguished characteristics or personal traits that are thought to be or actually are a disadvantage. So it's like a negative stereotype. So a lot of the times in our community, we say like, oh, that person está loca, or, using those words actually are not the correct terminology. That just brings the topic more down and it doesn't make us aware about what it actually is. So Jesus will get more into depth about that in the next slide.
Yeah, so thank you definitely for that. Definitely now we're going to be talking about why mental health isn't addressed or somewhat acknowledged in the Latinx community. And to start off, we have, the cultural stigma, the whole negative stereotype, a connotation, I would say, of like what is mental health and what does it look like. On the PowerPoint it reads, many Latinos don't seek treatment. And this is because some of them don't recognize the signs or the symptoms, the causes and the effects of what mental health is, the beginning aspects of what mental health is. And, because of this lack of information, this is what, keeps, that's how Edwin said, one of the participants here, he said that not that many people, that people feel like this is something they should keep to themselves. So this feeds within the cultural stigma of mental health and whether talking about the conversation or not. Because if someone is to speak out about it, they have this fear of being known as loco or loca or crazy, possibly, being a nightmare, that they're just having bad thoughts, they could get over it later on, and whatnot. But the reality is, this is a mental health condition that, it's not to cause shame, but it's more so to bring awareness within the Latinx community. So now, access to healthcare, there's a very, very big portion as well. The statistic reads that 19% in 2017 individuals who identify as Hispanic had no form of health insurance. Health insurance is typically, what we need most of the time in order to make sure we're kept up with, our physicals or whether something comes about regarding our mental health. But the thing is, some individuals that actually want to seek resources are taking that leap of faith and talking about mental health. Sometimes they're undocumented. They're undocumented citizens. They're not fully citizens in California or other United States. So then they have a fear of going to reach out for these resources and say, okay, I'm undocumented, but the fear is, am I going to get reported? Am I going to be transferred to a different institution? Am I going to be transferred to, possibly get deported, go back to, where the motherland, go back to where I originated? And then, there's a lot of variables to it. There's a lot of variables as in whether I have kids, whether I'm leaving behind, my parents who actually need me, that I'm their source of income. So there's a fear formed around accessing healthcare and whether or not it's actually, provided for them or, for others. So lack of representation, this is a little bit further into the process when someone goes into get access to healthcare and or they find resources or organizations. Now we look at the lack of representation, as in, who is serving the community when it comes to mental health and the Latinx members. The percentage reads that 1% of the American Psychology Association identifies themselves as Latino. So Latino doctors are definitely needed. Latino and Latina, Latinx are needed when it comes to the conversation of mental health. But let's say I'm going to, I have access to healthcare, and I'm going to use it to my advantage because I want to fight the stigmas. I want to normalize the conversation. But yet, the person who is attending me, my therapist or my psychologist, I would say, I think that's the word. They're not necessarily someone that looks like me, And then I have wonders like, are they really going to understand me? So this is where the conversation starts of, who is actually serving the community, and do they understand the needs that, my needs, or do they understand the needs of other Latinx individuals, and how are they going to serve the community? Not invalidating their professionalism and the work that they have done, but typically there's this lack of representation that kind of feeds into the conversation of why we don't talk about mental health. Because sometimes individuals will possibly have a different route when it comes to education. But now we're looking at this in a bigger spectrum where we want to access it. We want to start normalizing the conversation. And finally, we acknowledge our beliefs. As Latinos, we're taught to believe that we are strong and resilient, that we don't need help because we have the capacity to do it ourselves. In the last group, I gave an analogy of like a balloon. I have a balloon, and every time that something's going on with my mental health, I don't know how to express it. I don't know how to talk about it. I'm taking a deep breath and I'm exhaling into a balloon. This balloon is going to keep on getting bigger and bigger up to a point it's going to pop. And what's going to happen when it pops, when it explodes? That means that possibly I am going to explode as well. I'm going to get all these rush of emotions and feelings and questions about my mental health that I don't know what to do about it. And this relates to the beliefs. This relates that every single time that I want to talk about it, I'm being told to be strong and resilient. So I'm going to take a deep breath and keep on exhaling my strength and my resiliency into this balloon up until it can't handle it anymore. And we want to avoid that, definitely. If someone needs a place to breathe, breathe into the balloon, but also talk about it instead of breathing it out, And that's why we encourage to bring out this conversation of mental health. And thank you for Stephanie for this. And can we go to the next slide, please? So now we're going to be talking about why it's important. Starting the conversation could be tough, even acknowledging it or even addressing it, but only talking about mental health can we make it a part of our Latinx culture and language, integrating it. Is take it as a plant. You plant a seed and you're gonna want to watch that seed, that flower grow, sprout, and whatnot. You're going to keep on feeding it water, giving nutrients. That's our place to talk about mental health. We're going to be feeding, the conversation to our parents, to our friends, to our family members, and say, okay, let's talk about mental health for a little bit today. How are you feeling? Where do you stand today? And why is mental health important? At the bottom, we do have statistics, and it's regarding, attempted suicides. And what it says is that 10.5% of Latinas, adolescents aged between 10 to 24 years old in the U.S. have attempted suicide in the past years, given that this is in 2017. Now, these numbers are very important because we take a look at the numbers, and now we're going to correlate them to others, to other identifying communities. So over the past year, there has been a disproportionate amount of suicide among the Latinx people in comparison to the white counterparts, the white individuals, white females and males. So now, because of this statistic, it also intersects with gender, because women have a higher suicide rate as opposed to men. Now, I phrase the question of why, rhetorical question, to think about it inside, but why is that number there? Why is it high compared to others? We could take a look at cultural stigma. You could take a look at cultural beliefs, and we could tackle those. It's going to take time, but it will be manageable. So in the sense that if someone comes up to you or you spark the conversation of mental health, how can we help? You know, and a way that we can support and help is by offering resources, helping them find resources that could save lives, phone numbers, organizations, agencies. Only 20% of Latinos who experience symptoms of a psychological disorder talk to the doctor about their symptoms. 20% of the population. So that gives 80% of what do those other 80% do? You know, are they breathing into this analogy of a balloon up until they explode, up until they can't take it anymore, right? So when someone comes up, you know, this is more so taking action. If one of your friends or family members comes up and tells you about how they're feeling, acknowledge it, address them and believe them and trust them, and find ways that you can support them in that sense in order to make sure that mental health is taken care of. And now I'm going to be passing it to my colleague Sarai.
Thank you, Jesus. So now that we have talked about what mental health is, why Latinos don't talk about mental health, and why it's important to talk about mental health, now we're going to be getting into the details onto how we can take action. So we can stomp the stigma first by starting with all of ourselves. By offering our support to others during their struggles or recovery, whether that's with a mental illness or a mental health disorder, we could provide support and understanding. We have to be open to conversations about mental health and encourage equality in how people perceive physical illnesses and mental illnesses. By taking action to raise awareness, whether that's at the local, state, or national level, to advocate for positive change is also an amazing way that we can stomp the stigma around mental health. Something, for example, could be like talking to your city council or talking to the board of directors from your school. Just starting the conversation in communities where, you know, a lot of students are, where a lot of important people are at. Also just educating ourselves, you know, learning about mental health, educating others about what it is, why people don't talk about it, why we should talk about it. That's another way that we can stomp the stigma. And aiming to see the person, not the illness. So striving to understand and listen. A lot of the times when people have, you know, a mental disorder or a mental illness, they tend to look at that instead of acknowledging that this is also a human being. You know, they deserve to be understood. They deserve to be listened to, and not just because they have a mental illness, we should, you know, marginalize them. And another way that we can stomp the stigma is by using respectful language. A lot of times in Latinx culture, we hear words like, oh, estás loca, or like, no tienes nada, estás bien, you know? And it's phrases like that and words like that that don't allow us to start this conversation and normalize mental health as part of our lives. And those are some of the ways that we can stomp the stigma around mental health. So now I will pass it over to my colleague, Christina.
Thank you. So I will be talking about what self-care is and why it is important. But before I get into more details on that, I would like to ask the public, what do you think self-care is? And if you would like to write that down in the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself and ask and answer that. So self-care is, yes, Edwin, you are correct, taking care of both your physical and mental health. That is correct. So self-care is maintaining a healthy relationship with yourself. So as Edwin mentioned, we could be doing an activity where we take care of our physical, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual health. And it can be seen as something selfish by other people, but it's not selfish. Selfish means taking something away from someone else, but you're not taking anything away from anyone. You are taking care of yourself. You are learning to love yourself, love your physical self, your emotional self, take care of your spiritual and your mental health. So I would like us all to self-care is very important. First of all, because we all as human beings, we all go through a lot of stress, we all go through a lot of challenges in our lives, and they can be something from really small to really big, but it affects us all personally. And sometimes we choose to ignore it, how Jesus had mentioned his balloon analogy. We choose to ignore it, and the more we ignore it, the more bigger the balloon gets, and the bigger the balloon gets, you pop. And when you pop, that's when, you get this rush of feelings, you start feeling a lot of things, and you're not taking care of yourself in that way. In order to be able to take care of yourself, taking care of those problems that you choose to ignore, you have to be able to get through with those problems, talk about those problems that are hurting you physically, that are hurting you mentally, that are hurting you emotionally, spiritually. So which is why it's really important that we don't ignore these feelings. We don't ignore this stress. We don't ignore our challenges. We don't put them deep inside ourselves and just hope it goes away, because it will not go away. It will stay with you until you burst out and finally let it go. So I would like to invite you to be part of an activity. There is a Jamboard link in the chat, and in the Jamboard, I would like you to, if you would like to, write in some affirmations that are positive statements, that the more you repeat those statements, the more you start believing in those statements when you tell them to yourselves, and that starts creating a change of positivity within yourselves. So an example of an affirmation is, I am enough, I am strong, I am capable. If also your favorite motivational song, what song motivates you to, get up in the morning, or go do an exercise or something like that. So we have an example here is I Can Go the Distance by Hercules. Your favorite place to be in nature. Where do you like to go on walks? What makes you feel, calm? Your favorite healthy snack, or any self-care tips that, you do in your daily life, that you practice. And in the Jamboard, we have, I like to practice self-care by binge watching Netflix shows. I do too. I love practicing self-care by listening to music. Yes. Take a risk or lose a chance. When life gives you lemons, plant a lemon tree. Yes. Your favorite activity, going on bike rides. Yes, that is very, yes. And a favorite healthy snack, bananas and apples with peanut butter. I've never tried bananas with peanut butter. I will definitely try that. And a self-care is having a face washing routine and shopping for products. Definitely treating yourself. Spending time with family and friends is also very important, to interact with others. So yes, these are all great affirmations, great places to be, snacks, and self-care tips. These are all awesome. I hope you continue to do those. And so now I would like to give some examples or different ways that you can also practice self-care. You can also, meditate. I usually meditate before I go to sleep. Listening to music, I really enjoy doing that. You can also try grounding exercise like we did at the beginning. That also really helps, in between your Zooms, or when you're really busy throughout the day. Sometimes we forget to take a break, to go drink water, to eat a snack. Sometimes we do forget that. If you're not sleeping, well, create a regular sleep routine that will help you get, your total hours of sleep, which is really important for your physical health. Creating a healthy diet, going on walks like mentioned in the Jamboard, exercising, having positive notes, in the morning every day, look in the mirror and, say, you are enough, you are strong, you are capable of doing anything. Continue saying those to yourselves, because the more you say them, the more you know, they are true, and the more your mind will believe in you, and you'll start seeing that positive change within your daily life. Treating yourself, so rewarding yourself every now and then when you feel you have accomplished something, or because you feel that you should be rewarded for something. These are various ways, and there are a lot more ways, and everybody has different self-care tips, or practice self-care differently. No one's has the same self-care routine. Everyone is different, as you have seen in the Jamboard. And so, self-care tips, practice those daily. These are very important in your daily life because they become your routine, and they start creating a change of positivity in your life. And we would all like that to happen, to take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And in the next slide, I'm sure you have all kind of wondered, what is Latino service providers? So Latino service providers is a nonprofit organization that serves as a bridge across generations in the Latinx community, that helps young leaders to build awareness around mental health, health in general, culture, social issues, equity, and so many other things. We do presentations and in events like these. We also get trained to be able to talk about certain issues, and we are currently accepting applications for youth promotores, so people like us who come and do presentations like these and learn about mental health and different topics. And there's also a link in the chat where you can open it up, and it will show you our application link. It's a paid internship. The application is due on April 2nd of 2021. And if you have any questions about our organization or what we do, would like to know more about us, you can email our program manager, Magali Larque, and her email is in the slide. And share if you would like to become part of this. Go ahead and apply. And if you'd like to let other people that any friends or family that that would be very interested in this, also apply. You can go ahead and send them the link, and invite them to get to learn more about us. And I will pass it on to my colleague Sarai.
Yeah, so just to add on a little bit to the previous slide about the Youth Promotor program, it is an amazing program that offers students the opportunity to really take action in their community. You do get a lot of leadership roles. You learn lots of skills that are essential for the workforce. You get certified in mental health first aid and suicide prevention. You also have the opportunity to take a class through, I believe it is the University of San Francisco. I may be wrong, as a community health worker. And obviously because of COVID, everything has to be a little bit virtual this year, but in the previous years before COVID, you do have the opportunity to do a lot of outreach in communities, to engage with the Latinx community, to work with children, to work with adults, to work with all kinds of people from Sonoma County. So if any of you are interested in being community health workers and working in the force of mental health, social work, public health, anything that involves any of that, then this is a really great internship for you. And it also looks really great on resumes and college applications. I cannot stress enough how much this internship has helped me personally. I have won awards because of the work that I've done with this organization. I have won a lot of scholarships for school as well because of the work that I've done with this organization. So, I mean, there's really nothing to lose here. So if you guys, as my partner mentioned, if you guys know of anyone who would be interested in this, share this with anyone. We are also on social media at Latino Service Providers, Facebook and Instagram. And if you guys have any questions, like my partner said, just send them down in the chat, or you could contact our program manager. Oh, and this internship, I almost forgot, sorry. This internship is actually open between the ages of 16 to 23, I believe. So if you are in between those ages, it is also an amazing opportunity. It's not just for high school students, it's also for college students as well. So that concludes our presentation. So if any of you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to unmute yourselves or just write them down in the chat. We would be more than happy to answer your questions. And as just a quick reminder, at the beginning of the presentation, we mentioned that there was a survey. We would like all of you to take the time to answer, just to kind of get information on how this presentation went, what we can do better. So the link should be on the chat by now. So if you guys could please take that survey and just mention in the chat when you guys are done. That way we know that everyone has done it. That would be very helpful. Thank you. And we'll just give you guys a little bit of minutes to do that.
Alrighty, so in a minute, we will just start a brief game. And then, yeah, it should be fun. We just want to also incorporate a fun little aspect to our presentation as well. But yeah, let us know when you guys are done by giving us a thumbs up or just saying done on or in the chat.